Be talking about evangelism, and this is going to be a great study that you get to participate in this week. When you think about the book of Acts, it is about evangelism. It's about how the church started and how it spread. And when you look at it, I made some notes here that you'll see everything from one-on-one to corporate. You see on the day of Pentecost 3,000 believers, and you see many times corporate, but you also see many times in different ways in a one-on-one situation. But one-on-one to corporate, Gentiles or Greeks to Jews, the poor to the rich, the peasant to the philosophers, the regular citizens to kings, door to door to river streams, countryside to synagogues. We see evangelism page after page and chapter after chapter in the book of Acts. I like Acts chapter 8 verse 4. That's when the diaspora of the church first happened. And it says as they went out from there, as the church was scattered because of the persecution, that they went everywhere sharing Christ as they went. And then if you look over in chapter 11 and verse 19, I'd encourage you, to take some notes right now and jot down that verse, because you see all those chapters later, you see a church at Antioch, and it says it was started by this diaspora that happened in Acts chapter 8 through the persecution of really a man named Saul led a lot of that persecution, of course, who later became Paul. So evangelism happens in a lot of ways, in a lot of different forms. I like how Paul adapted, and that's probably one of the biggest lessons for us to learn is to adapt to the different situations. And really, that's why a lot of people are afraid of evangelism, because they don't know where it's going to go, and wherever it goes, you have to adapt. Because in order to be effective in evangelism, you don't just come with a presentation. You're going to see what happened with Paul per se in on his journey when he went to Athens, and he went there and he sees all of these gods along there, and he talks with synagogue and Gentiles and in the marketplace, and then he's asked to go speak before the Epicureans and the Stoics, philosophers of that time. And Paul, it's a great study. I'd like to lead you in that one. Maybe we can do that later, but boy, if you want to park on, I think I've got it here is Acts chapter 17, partway through, talks about Paul's experience at Athens. But if you want to go there and just read it and then start to analyze and jot down observations, you will be amazed at the pages of stuff that comes from that and what you will learn from that if you park on that passage. I'm really going to mess this up. I want to say it's in 2 Timothy chapter 2. Let me see if that is right. Okay, let me go to 1 Timothy. Oh, that was 1 Timothy. Let me go to 2 Timothy chapter 2. And yeah, it is here. And I'll just read part of this to you. We'll start at verse 3. Verse 2. And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable men who are also be qualified to teach others. Here it comes. He's going to give 3 examples, and then just a key statement in verse 7. Endure hardship with us like a good soldier. No one serving as a soldier gets involved in civilian affairs. He wants to please his commanding officer. Similarly, if anyone competes as an athlete, he does not receive the victor's crown unless he competes according to the rules. The next one is the hardworking farmer should be the first to receive a share of the crops. Now here's the passage that I want you to catch. Reflect on what I'm saying, and the Lord will give you insight into all of this. So in our Bible reading, we could just read right down through that passage and keep on reading, but Paul tells us something very important. He's instructing Timothy, discipling, mentoring Timothy, and he says, Timothy, it's important that at times, and this would be one of those times, that you stop, reflect on what I just said, and let the Lord kind of fill in the gaps, give you some insight into that. So, when it comes to a lot of passages, but one in particular in Acts is Acts chapter 17, and just start making notes. Reflect on what Paul's doing. Not necessarily, we want to read the text, but then we want to look behind the text and just look at Paul and say, so what is Paul doing there? What did he do? And but anyway, evangelism, you have to be able to maneuver and to be flexible. And I like 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22. Paul says, I've become all things to all men, so that by every possible means I may win some. So evangelism starts with the person where they are. It's not just a presentation. Here it is. Now you back up and you find out where they are and how to have those conversations to find out where they are. And then you start at that point and answer the questions and move forward. There'll be times you don't know the answers. Not a big deal. You just say, you know what, I don't have the answer to that, but let me do a little time and study, and I'll come back and we can talk about that again. Is that okay? And they'll say, yep, sure enough, sure is. Just another thing I observe that Paul did, and in Acts chapter 17, I don't know if I mentioned it, but it says he went to the synagogues and he talked to the Jews, he talked to the Greek believers, he went to the marketplace, and then he went. He was actually invited to speak to the philosophers, I think at Mars Hill. Anyway, you see the whole spectrum there, and that's what you get to see throughout Acts. I think there's a place, maybe a couple of places, where it says, as Paul was accustomed to, he went to the synagogue. As was Paul's custom, he went to the synagogue when he got to a city, and that's where he began to teach and spread the gospel. So he had a system, and I think that's something that we need to think about is a system. Like I said, it starts with the people where they are. So what's one or two questions that we can kind of throw out there? And what we're doing is just kind of putting it out there and pushing against the door to see if the door opens, and if it does, then we walk through it. If the door doesn't, then you don't, take the Bible and slam them on the head and keep pushing.